I always like to start with getting the story about how you got to New York. How'd that happen? What's that story?
Oh, Maron. Well, I started in Chicago, and if you keep, I just said it, and I was like, oh, you can definitely hear it. So I started in Chicago. I was mostly with like IO and Annoyance, and I had one little moment of success. I was selected for this showcase for NBC Universal, which was cool. We went to LA and like had to come up with a show in 10 days.
Wow.
A lot of great people were part of that. It was a very exciting time. And after that, I thought, or also the person I was dating at the time felt pretty excited about LA. So we moved out there first. And then I realized about 6 weeks in that I was very unhappy, just in all the ways. So I lit my life on fire and moved out here. And at the time, I was struggling with a lot of like mental health and, just being in flux. So I took a break from comedy when I moved to New York, and I did a dramatic acting conservatory at the Atlantic Theater School. So that was kind of a cool, wacky twist in my journey. And then at the time, the Annoyance Theater New York was still a thing. It was pretty new at the time. And so I got involved there. A lot of the people that started it or were there for the, from the ground floor were my peers in Chicago. So it was easy to kind of slip in, and the rest is history, baby. Yo.
What did you dislike about Los Angeles?
Oh, I think it was just, I think I liked that it was nice there, and it was very pretty and warm. But I think like maybe deep down, I always wanted to be here. And I think once I got there and really like, for people from Chicago, the leap and the choice of the coast is like such a decision. I felt like I would talk to my like best girlfriend out here and just feel like sick after hanging up the phone. I wanted to be with like my dudes and the people that I felt most creative and like exciting around, and most of them were here. So I had to make a change.
What is the reputation for Chicagoans between the two cities? In the comedy world, how are they regarded? How is LA regarded? How is New York regarded?
Well, that's a good question. I think people from Chicago love Chicago. Like, if you want to become an improviser, that's where you should do it. It's the nerdiest shit ever. Everyone's like all in. You can go watch an improv show any night of the week. You can go hang out at a big bar where like 70 of your closest friends are just dorking out about the same thing you're into. And then usually what happens is people kind of hit a point where they're like, okay, I think I'm good enough. I want to go pro. And they kind of make that decision between moving on to LA or New York. And I think a lot of people think New York is kind of like I'm talking out of my ass at this point, but at least in my experience at my time, going to New York was sort of like the bad kids club move. And then people moving to LA were like, I'm going to get myself organized. I'm going to stop being a drunk. And I'm going to become a professional actor. I guess that's what my evaluation would be.
So you came here to continue your alcoholism.
Yeah. Yeah. And boy, have I kicked it up a notch. Wow. I'm just an absolute mess. No, but yeah, like it is funny to have, Midwesterners can throw back like 8 beers in an evening and be like, okay, well, off to pick up my kids from their sleepover. I don't know. But like a lot of friends who go out to LA do end up they lose all this weight. They get into walking around outside, and a lot of them pivot to smoking weed. And yeah, it's funny. It's just, the places do cause you to evolve around their personality. So
when you came out to New York, I mean, it sounds like you already had at least somewhat of a network. What was your network like? What did you know you would have access to when you got here?
Yeah. So the man that created the Annoyance Theater is this guy called Mick Napier. And at the time, he directed this showcase that I'd been part of. And he directed like a main stage show at the Annoyance that I had been in. So we had a pretty good relationship. He's kind of like an old bald pervert. And he sort of looks like a fucked up version of Daddy Warbucks from Little Orphan Annie. Anyways, and he calls me a witch, which is, bullshit because I'm actually beautiful. Anyways, he was, operating the Annoyance New York, but remotely. So I had a little in from the top of the food chain, but also a ton of my best pals were performing there. I was part of a show in Chicago called Holy Fuck Comedy Hour, and that whole crew sort of made the move to New York around the same time. So slid into the scene pretty easily, which was nice and lovely.
Before you came here, I mean, it sounds like you've been doing comedy for years.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you had elevated to a level where you were ready for something new, a new place, a harder place?
Yes, for sure. I love Chicago. Like, I love going back. My family's there. Beautiful place. But I also felt like I wasn't growing anymore in a way that was exciting to me. I sort of like had hit the milestones that I had hoped for when I was fresh out of school and like trying to get involved. And it felt like I needed to push harder and to like get in a new game to sort of see what, if I have what it takes or whatever. And it turns out I don't. Not at all. It's an ugly industry. I don't care for it, and I don't know what's tethered me here still.
How did you know it was time for something new? Was it really just like an internal sense of plateauing or what?
Yeah, I think a lot of my close friends had started to make the migration, and then for me, I think like a moment of real validation that I maybe could do it was this showcase, because it was, it was like a big professional opportunity, and it was nationwide in Canada, and I was the only person from Chicago that got picked for it, which was a huge honor. So yeah, I mean, it felt like someone said like, yeah, you're good enough to be considered for these opportunities. So yeah, I think that was kind of like the push.
What did you find when you got here? I don't know if you had a home ready. I mean, Nick was telling me the other day he had a Greenpoint house with 3 other people he knew from Chicago that he moved into. Did you have a similar setup? Well, tell me about the first few weeks here.
Yeah. That place that Nick was talking about was insane. And the turnover of bodies from the same place was bananas. But some real legends had lived in that place at some point. For me, I came first for the summer to test this program out, this acting program. And I found a roommate on Facebook. And she was very kind and lovely over the phone, and she had a room all set up, and she was just looking to pick up a little bit of extra money before her boyfriend moved in. So I stayed with her and then kind of did that move of like bopping around to places that, had like a bed and a room, but then didn't officially kind of like settle in and really move to a place until that September, I guess. Yeah. So it's wild times.
Did you know when you got here you were going to have to pick up other jobs to be able to make ends meet? Like, talk to me about that equation before finally making the jump here, because this is one of the most, if not the most expensive city in the world.
It's disgusting. Yes. And that was actually like a very intimidating part of the whole move. I had held on to a very like cool but very stressful job that was in an office setting. I worked for a travel company, so I'd get to like go to France and stuff, and it was nice, but it didn't pay as much as I would have hoped and was like pretty demanding. So when I moved here, I decided to like not keep it remote and just sever ties and make the pivot. And a lot of Google articles said that actors do odd jobs like waiter work and nanny and stuff. And I literally walked around on Graham Avenue with purple paper that was scented because my roommate at the time was a lunatic. This was all she had. And I had my resume on it, and I literally walked like door to door, like a cartoon, being like, "Excuse me, I've never done this before. I'm from corporate, but could I be a waiter?" And one restaurant was like, "Okay," but it didn't go well. Yeah, I won't say the name of the restaurant, but I think like usually they do like a couple training shifts and then you're supposed to get paid. I had been on like maybe my 6th training shift. And at one point the chef like screamed at me that I stunk, that I was like ruining the food because of my shampoo or something. So it just wasn't a great fit. I also have very petite hands. So it was hard to carry the plates around. Oh, and the whole system was in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish. It was a big fat fail. So then I pivoted to the nanny world, which has held me in a vice-like grip for the last decade. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that world. Is that pretty common for actors and actresses, for comedians to get involved in that? Does it pay well?
Yeah, you know what? One thing that is wild is like right now I'm looking for another nanny job. And when you've been at it for a while and you're like, I don't know, like a mother-aged white woman with a college degree, people will pay an insane amount of money for you to like screw around and, I don't know, like play dolls with their kid. So yeah, it's a pretty like lucrative job. The trade-off is that, families want your flexibility. So it can be tricky to find a good fit where they can be cool about you saying, "Hey, sorry, could I go in your bathroom and put on a bunch of like goblin makeup before I leave here to go to a show? And then could I come in a little late tomorrow because it's gonna be a rough night." But some people are cool. Some rich people are cool, it turns out.
When you say lucrative, how lucrative are we talking about? I mean, is that enough to allow you to live in New York?
Yes, absolutely. I would say like the average rate, like the going rate for nannies right now is like starting at like $30 an hour.
Wow.
It's pretty good.
Yep.
And some of them will go all the way up to like $50 an hour, and give you like healthcare and a phone and stuff. Yeah, it can be like a pretty good gig, but there's also like downsides to, approaching the jobs amongst the 1% because they also treat you like garbage.
Is that right?
I remember right after the pandemic, I interviewed for 2 families that were definitely billionaires. Yes. And both families had cameras in the bathroom. Isn't that fucked up? Yeah. Like one of them, they were like hidden in all the light switches in the house, and like a co-nanny. I mean, we're talking about 3 kids, 3 nannies on a rotating schedule, like 24/7, 6 nannies total shifts. And I like went outside with this girl to take these twins to a music class. And she turned to me and goes, "Do not take this job. Do not take this job. There are cameras in the bathrooms. The mother is those shark eyes that she has. There's nothing behind them. She is a monster." Yeah. But I don't know. They're like fancy house upstate, had an elevator in it and like a full fucking playground in the basement. So it's a trade-off, you know?
Who are the best people to babysit for, to be a nanny for?
Oh, I personally love a baby. Babies are so chill. They sleep. They're cute. They sleep. That's my pocket. If you're not intimidated by babies. And I actually think that babies are easier than puppies. I say that as a non-parent, but I think that's where it's at. I think the older they get, the more complicated it gets. Because, yeah, it's harder to like negotiate with them, and you have to start being funnier when they get older. And then even then, sometimes you can't trick them into doing the things they're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I'd say like using jokes has always served me well as a childcare provider. Because, you know, if a 2-year-old's having a tantrum and you can trick them into laughing or, you know, tickle them until they forget why they're upset, smooth sailing, baby.
So right now, is that like roughly 20 hours a week you've got to be working to do your craft? What does that look like?
Yeah, right now I guess it's around part-time. Yeah. I've been working on the weekends for the last couple of years, which has been an okay gig, but I'm looking to like, you know, shake it up and get back to that baby world. But yeah, like you can work pretty part-time and definitely be making enough to survive. It doesn't hurt that I teach as well, you know, teach comedy class. And that's like a pretty good gig on the side too. I've learned recently that that's the only special skill I have at this point. That, you know, I can justify like getting $40 or $50 an hour for. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
You did. Talk to me about the characters you had when you moved here, like the work that you knew you could bring to the city. What did you develop? What were you excited about bringing to the comedy scene in New York?
That's a good question too. I think like the character that I was doing the most, that was like most had the most heat at the time, was like. The idea was that it was the first Hooters waitress, and she was like this, I mean, mess, you know, like makeup everywhere, hair everywhere, and kind of like, sort of like, all right, you bunch of Pop-Tarts, you think you can do this job? Let me show you how it's done. You know, like that kind of a vibe. And I love that one because I also have I'm passionate about breakaway props and special effects. And in that one, I put a beer bottle in my mouth like I'm going to suck it off. And then I bite it and it shatters and blood comes out of it. I spoiled it for anyone that hasn't seen it. But yeah, that was kind of my signature character at the time. And I do think that's pretty representative of what I do, which is behave like a crazy person, with a lot of like shit smeared all over my face. That's the extent of my range.
What are the options for where you can work in this city? We talked about two before we started recording. What are the venues where character actors can go to work in the city?
Yeah. I mean, the classics, UCB, the Magnet, the Pitt Theater, my home, the Brooklyn Comedy Collective is where I teach. And actually, the Brooklyn Comedy Collective is interesting because it was sort of born out of the ashes of the Annoyance New York, which sort of, as I mentioned Mick Napier earlier, that place got to a point of Lord of the Flies chaos that they decided not to allow it anymore. It really was like mom and dad are far away and we have a dungeon basement to do whatever we want in. And the New York Times said this is punk rock comedy. So it encouraged a lot of bad behavior. So BCC is kind of like a little evolved version of that. And obviously it's a different kind of training program and stuff, but I would say the roots of it are definitely Chicago flavored. So yeah, those are the main places I know. And then of course, like all the wild open mics and bizarre bar shows that you can do. Yeah. I think like if I was going to give advice for like how to get involved in that and learn more about like what theaters there are or venues, the trick is to go to shows, to go to other people's shows, small shows, big shows, whatever, mostly small shows. Start where you're at, and then talk to the people afterwards and demonstrate your interest. And that's how people, I think, usually get on shows and get pulled into the rotations of people that get asked to do stuff. So, yeah.
How did you know you were a comedian? I don't know how far back that goes, but how do you explain that about yourself? How far back does that go? How did you know that was kind of who you are?
I mean, I definitely have always been obnoxious. Truly, ask anyone who's known me my whole life, my family. Yeah, I do have this like weird memory. I was always hamming it up. And that was like that was in great contrast to the sort of like personality vibe of the rest of my family. But my whole family is super funny. My dad's hilarious. My mom's a lunatic. My brothers are funny. My sister's funny. And I have two older brothers. So I feel like maybe like natural sort of personality impulses paired with trying to like impress my older brothers is sort of where that's the perfect storm to become a woman who wants to play in a boy's world. But yeah, I like grew up watching like, Tommy Boy and Adam Sandler shit. And yeah, I've just always was trying to make people laugh. And I do have this one very weird memory of standing on a coffee table in Hawaii at some family's house, like a colleague of my dad's from like years ago. And I had like one of those little microphones. Remember that one that was like white and it had like a little handle on the top and I think it had a face on it. But anyways, I was standing on a table, like doing bits for these people. And my parents were like, stop it. And I think I was probably like 5 years old or something. But yeah, I think I've always been kind of an asshole. You gotta find the job. You gotta find the job that works for you.
You said earlier you have a college degree. How did you decide after college to pursue this route?
Oh yeah. So I started out in art and design in college, and on the very first day there was like this big event on the quad, and these guys had these like posters that looked like protest posters, but they said all these fucked up things. And I thought it was funny, and it turned out they were a sketch comedy group. And so that was sort of like how I even started, I guess. I was way too like shy to go out for like school plays and stuff. That was like drama and not for me. But I didn't even know that you could like get involved in something that was, putzing around at college doing SNL stuff. So that's how that started. And then I got sucked into it. And I pivoted out of my art major, which was very labor intensive, to a bullshit major so that I could focus on my extracurriculars. I really feel that I studied sketch comedy in college, not whatever it is my degree's in. Remember, my dad was really upset to find out that I have a bachelor's of science in media studies. He said that's not science. Yeah.
Do you think this is something you'll do the rest of your life? Is this sort of, for lack of a better word, a calling? Like this is something that's sort of deep in your bones?
Yeah. I cannot imagine ever giving it up.
Yeah.
I could imagine giving up on the pro game for sure. That's just a war of attrition. If you get lucky or you die trying. But like, I can't imagine ever giving up performing or improvising or, all that stuff. It's like part of who you are at a certain point, for good or for bad.
Tell me about the teaching that you do. It sounds like that's relatively lucrative. It's one of your ways of earning an earned living wage, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is that once a week? What does that look like? How could people find you?
Yeah. So I usually teach 2 nights a week. I teach improv level 2 and sketch comedy level 1. The classes get posted. They're 7-week sections, and they're posted on the Brooklyn Comedy Collective's website, brooklyncc.com. And I think like as a teacher, I try to be super encouraging and make like a fun, safe space to act like an idiot. Because I think one important thing to remember is that improv is stupid. It's not cool. Like if you zoom out, like talk to like a regular person, they're like, oh, cool. You are very proud that you are an adult who does make believe in front of like a room full of people just trying to eat their dinner. You know what I mean? Like, you're lucky if an audience actually wants to be there, because it's such a goofy little art form. So, yeah, I think like as a teacher, that's an important value I like to set up in the class, because if you're too worried about being good or like, being cool and stuff, you can't really like play. And that's what it is.
Who are the people that typically are your students? Are these people who are just trying to become more outgoing, social, comfortable in the spotlight? What have you noticed?
Yeah, most of them are younger, more attractive, energetic people that want the jobs that I want, and I'm teaching them how to take them from me. I'd say that's like the usual demographic.
So you love these people.
Yes. I'd say like, yeah, a lot of creative types, a lot of eccentric types. And then sometimes you get these like fun pockets of people that are just trying to like, as you said, explore comfort in front of people, or they've been given feedback at work that they need to work on public speaking, which always cracks me up because I don't know if that's like actually, I don't know if improv is actually that good at helping someone with that journey. It's definitely good at helping you like stand up in front of people and make a fool of yourself on purpose. So I guess you could pivot that a little bit into public speaking, but yeah, it's a total mix of folks.
Do you regard, so you got a teaching job, you got a part-time job, and then you do performances.
Mm-hmm.
Are you satisfied excited, happy with your arc? Will you not be satisfied until or unless you get some other much more difficult to obtain job? How do you think about the work in general and ambition?
That's also, I keep saying that's a good question. I think it truly ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just how it is for people in this pursuit. You have like real lows where you're feeling totally rejected and it feels like it's been forever since you caught a break or whatever. And it's really easy to like give in to those little pockets of like dread, I think. Yeah. But then you'll have like little incremental highs and, just having a good show can be like all it takes to kick you back onto like an upswing.
Yeah.
I think as a younger person, I thought that, I was going to be on Saturday Night Live. And then as a slightly older person, I thought I could maybe be on Saturday Night Live. And I think like maybe all of us have a goal like that just because it's the only one you can clearly picture. But I think that you're not really in it if that's the only thing you want. So yeah, you go through like phases of like grief and mourning opportunities that you would have hoped to be considered for or gotten, and then you also evolve and have different expectations for yourself. So like right now, like for example, a lot of my peers did do the auditions for SNL, or they at least got to be seen, and then they got the chance to test on the stage and whatever. Wow. And that I never got to do that. Even though I was like in this showcase for NBC, the woman who was making those decisions at the time I was playing at IO never thought I was a good fit for it. She actually told me I was too weird for the show. So I've never got that chance, and I think that's one little milestone regret, because it's like, to me, getting to test or whatever is like, that's the goal.
Yeah.
You can't control whether you get the job or not, but to get to be good enough to get a shot at it should be what you're trying for. In the same way that like, if you get a call back, praise, okay? Like that means they think you could do it. Yeah. And everything else is just a matter of like, who's got the right look for this job, So I think like starting to adjust your expectations of what success looks like is an essential part of continuing in the war,
Yeah. Yeah. The people that did get a chance to try out, how the hell does that even happen? How do they make that opportunity for themselves? And do you know what the percentage is of people that even make it to that point getting an offer to be on the show, roughly?
Yeah. I mean, at least coming up in Chicago. So basically what would happen is every season there would be like a series of, you could submit to do your solo sketch comedy showcase. And usually it's like a 5 or 3 minute set. And so all these people that were like fairly established at the theater would get up and they'd all take their shot, and this woman would watch, Sharna Halpern, and she would choose like 10 people maybe from the IO community, and then Second City would do it also. And they'd pick 10, and then the big night would come and Lorne Michaels would come to the theater and be out in this like tiny theater, and they'd watch the 10 go up, and then they'd call their representation, and then people would get flown out to test. So like that's how Cecily Strong got it. Adie Bryant, Tim Robinson, Paul Britton, Vanessa Bayer. God, a lot of Chicago folks.
Yeah.
Alex Moffat, Chris Redd. Yeah. So that's kind of a magical thing that maybe like I think that's how they do it in these other cities as well. But for the Chicago kids, that's like such an exciting little moment in time. So
yeah. And the ones that do get to go out to New York and test, is it 1 in 20 that get an offer? Like,
I think probably something like that. Okay. Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe everyone, you test, and then some of those people get offered a writing job, or some might be offered a part as a cast member. But I do believe it's like a pretty small number of people, and I've heard that it's a pretty intimidating experience too, because you're just like chilling in a green room, and then you're on that stage in front of like the people who are on the show, all being like, okay, let's see what you got. So
I would think a lot of people would be curious to know your thoughts about the. I'm sure you've worked with a ton of very talented comedians, and if you think there is a reasonable correlation between the most talented people and the people that get on that show, or if it's not the case that that's true, and it's much more random and timing and luck that goes into it.
I think of it as like rings of hell. Like you practice, or you get good, or you're naturally talented or whatever, and you work to get into the next ring, right? And then you reach a certain ring of skill and, reputation or whatever. And then after that, it's kind of like a dice roll. Yeah. I think I'm not naming names. I will respectfully say that there's like, you'll see people plucked from a community, and people will go, what the hell? Yeah. Them? They got it? But I think that speaks to like the luck of it, and also the hustle. Because people who hustle and like really put themselves out there break harder than people who are just talented. So I've seen a lot of like the best people just never even get a foot in the door, because they're just not they're not like hunting it that way, So I think the hustlers, if you can get that combo of like talent and hustle, you can then graduate to the next ring.
What does that mean? People that are hustling, people who are putting themselves out there, what do they do that these other people aren't necessarily open to doing?
Yeah, I think people that perform all the time, they're reaching out, self-advocating. Can I do this show? Can I be on this show? They're testing their material every week. They're going to the open mics. They're doing the like kind of cringe part of the work, which is to reach out and like ask people for what you want, and to say that you deserve it. And in these days, that also includes like the online presence of it all, the front facing 15-second videos or whatever, which is, I think, the single most devastating part of my comedic experience and career.
The 15-second clip?
The influencing of it all. That doesn't appeal to me in particular. I'm much more like, I prefer to like really work on something long form and give it everything I've got and do all the prep and all this stuff. And culture is shifting to not value that anymore. I mean, you see that in like TV and movies in some ways too. Like I heard some really sad shit that when a friend was pitching TV shows at some network, and they asked if they had any second screen pitch ideas, which meant shows that you could be on your phone watching at the same time. Second screen, like something that's shitty enough that you could follow it without really paying attention. And that to me is like just devastating. So yeah, I mean, I have Instagram, and I post my little show promos, and occasionally a bit, but yeah, that part is, it's a little depressing that like that's valued more than putting in the years on a stage, you know?
Totally.
And you'll see that in like showcase opportunities now too, where, you know, these people that have been like doing the work of the actual job, and then people just who have a big following showing up for this like audition opportunity. And, you know, you find out that this person who's got like an online presence has never performed in front of a live audience. Like that is such a knife twist, you know?
Yeah.
So
who are the most talented, amazing comedians that you've worked with that no one has ever heard of before?
Oh, Nick Mestad.
Yeah.
Micah Sternberg, Andy Junk, Dan Bazaldua, Annie Donnelly. I don't think people have heard of Annie, but they should have. Joe Scott. The two of them have a podcast called Mom Stomp, which is insane. They're both mothers, but it's mostly them just like shit talking about Rihanna and stuff.
And what makes them so good? Like your favorite comedians, what in your mind makes for a great comedian?
You know, in the case of like female comedians, I was really lucky in Chicago to have a girl group that was like 10 truly insane women of all different flavors. And for me, what's most exciting about that is truly capturing like a sense of like wild abandon. And my partner was saying like, we were talking about like it factors, you know, so people would say like someone with an it factor is like a Marilyn Monroe, where they both seem innocent and extremely sexualized at the same time. Or James Dean, right? Because he was like extremely sensitive, but also kind of hard-edged at the same time. And for me, like the comedy female it thing is that they can make you feel safe and so in danger at the same time. That's just so exciting to me. And I think it kind of captures like something that's uniquely feminine and crazy lady, you know, like women that are like, I don't give a fuck. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who, other than SNL, what are the other gold standard opportunities, the best opportunities out there for people that do what you do? Or is it really just SNL?
I mean, I think like there's obviously like smaller scale opportunities, like main stage shows at some of the classic theaters, you know, like Second City and things like that. I would say as the like culture has evolved, there's a lot of cool TV shows that really favor sketch comedy style performance, you know? But I would say like in terms of like a classic sketch show, SNL is and has always been the one, you know? Unless they bring Mad TV back, which honestly, I can remember watching that as a kid and being like, "Ooh, is this problematic?" And the answer is yes, some of it was. Yeah. But if you revisit, Will Sasso doing Randy Newman is, I think, the most accurate and effective impression I've ever seen. Look it up. Also, he does a great Schwarzenegger.
I'll do that. Does that make you sad or upset that there aren't more really mainstream, big-time opportunities for people in your world? I mean, to me, it seems like you're kind of, to give a sports analogy, playing in like the Division I NCAA basketball league. But to make it into the NBA is a combination. It's extraordinarily unlikely for anyone to be able to make it there, even if you have the talent and the capability to do that. How do you think about that? Does it upset you that there aren't Mad TVs and other mainstream, big time opportunities for people to know all these people you just listed out and more?
Yeah, I think like, I was just like bitching about the influencer culture, but at the same time, that has opened some opportunities. You know, like streaming, for example, is kind of a double-edged sword because a lot of friends who are so talented, who never would have gotten their own TV show, you know, in the 90s, have actually gotten to do shows. Like Joe Pera made an amazing show called Joe Pera Talks With You. Even like Tim Robinson's sketch show, I Think You Should Leave. Those are things that I think those are shows that we've been uniquely privileged to have because of streaming. But at the same time, I think that model for the industry has made it incredibly difficult to be a working actor. And that goes across the board, comedy, drama, whatever. Yeah. And so I guess as I said, I feel like it's kind of a double-edged sword. And I do think it's like a bummer that people aren't more interested in more shows like SNL existing. What's weird is I don't know if we know for sure that they're not. I think if these networks were like willing to take a shot at, you know, having more of those kinds of shows out there, it could be more of a scene, you know, on a professional level. I'll mention I Think You Should Leave again because that is have you seen this show?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Tim Robinson is an absolute legend. He's from Chicago, or he was a Chicago guy. And he initially was cast on SNL the same season as, I think it was the same season as Aidy Bryant. And he was on it for like a minute. And people weren't getting it. Like they didn't understand him. I personally think they didn't give him long enough to make a, you know, to teach the audience his whole thing. But then he moved to the writing staff and then did that for a number of years, and then was given he did his own TV show with Sam Richardson, who's also like a hilarious, legendary comedy Chicago guy. But Tim then got a deal with Netflix to make his own sketch show, and it is insane. Huh. It is. He's such an idiot, like truly, like he's a genius, I think, for sure, like a comedic genius. Incredible, so funny, and also everything he does is absurd, stupid, wacky, like annoying. I mean, it shouldn't be successful, and it has been hugely successful. Wow. Like mainstream audiences love this show, yeah. And that to me speaks to like sure. Maybe the people in charge aren't always aware of like what's quality. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but for sure.
Last question I want to ask you is how hard this has been to maintain. I think you may have used the word attrition earlier to do this and to commit yourself to this. And if you think despite all of the sacrifice, it's been worth it.
Yes, because this is what I am. Yeah. Like I could try to like learn a trade. But this is who I am. It's what I am. It is what I have dedicated the most waking hours of my existence to, performing and playing and being a dumbass for other people's enjoyment. And, I think it's always going to be hard. And I think I can't imagine myself without it. Yep. That's the problem. I wish I could. Oh my God, I can't tell you how much I wish I was the kind of person that like went to a job they kind of like, and then their idea of like a Wednesday was go to dinner with a friend and then watch Blue Bloods and go to sleep. Like that would be so great. But no, some of us we have something wrong with us. That this is something that's in our brains, it's in our personalities. We can't breathe without it, you know? I really think I guess that's how to answer that question.
How hard has it been?
It's hard. It's so hard.
What's the hardest part?
I think self-doubt is the hardest part. And I think if you don't have self-doubt, you're not doing a good job. I think you should constantly be like trying to be better than the last thing you did. You should always be a work in progress. And I think sometimes people who are like blindly confident do succeed, but success doesn't necessarily mean that you're great. And that's a value to like hold on to too. If you can do work that you're proud of, hopefully, if you keep your head down, be nice to people, and keep working, something will come.
Yeah. Devin, thanks for doing this.
Hey, thank you.